Welcome to Healthy Living with Dr. EE. Before we begin the event, please be reminded that the content is copyrighted. No recording and sharing is allowed. We would like to introduce a special guest who has always achieved outstanding academic achievement, Dr. EE. Dr. EE graduated from the University of Glasgow School of Medicine. She completed her internship and obtained her Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery degree and medical license in the UK at the tender age of 23. She was also awarded the Teaching Excellence Merit while working at a hospital in the UK. The University of Glasgow School of Medicine has a proud 500 years history. It is regularly ranked among the world's top 100 university and the top 10 medical school in the UK. Dr. EE had worked in Queen Hospital in London and the top-notch National University Hospital in Singapore. So let us all welcome the special guest for today, Dr. EE Zhang.
Hi everyone. Firstly, I want to thank you for taking time out of your morning to listen to me talk. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Dr. EE. We are glad to have you with us this morning. Let us begin with the first questions. What are the differences between viruses and bacteria?
So especially during these times when there's a new virus running rampant around the world, a lot of people might be wondering what exactly is the difference between a virus and a bacteria. So to help me out, I have a PPT that I'd like to share with everyone here. Give me a moment here. So firstly, one of the main differences between viruses and bacteria are that they are entirely different organisms. For example, bacteria are something that you can say are alive, whereas you can't say the same for viruses. Viruses you can't say are entirely alive. They're more of genetic material that is encapsulated inside a capsule. Sorry, some technical difficulties here. So one of the main differences between bacteria and viruses are the size. For example, viruses are much, much smaller than bacteria. Viruses are only about 20 to 400 nanometers, whereas bacteria are about 200 to 1,000 nanometers. Now, if you wanted to compare the two of them together, then you can see the picture there. A virus would be the person, and the bacteria compared to a virus would be the size of an 11-story building. Another thing is with replication. Like I mentioned before, viruses and bacteria are very different. Bacteria are alive. You can say that they are alive because they can replicate on their own. As long as they have the nutrients available, then bacteria are capable of taking these nutrients and then multiplying by themselves because they have all the machinery inside themselves to do that. Whereas viruses replicate by hijacking another cell. So viruses will need to take over another cell. They need to take over the machinery inside the cell to be able to replicate. That's why, for most cases, viruses need to come in contact with a cell that is alive. So, for the current virus going around today, you don't have to worry too much about it getting through your skin because the surface of your skin isn't alive. It's actually a layer of dead skin cells. And because they're not alive, viruses aren't able to take over those cells. So, for this current virus, most of the time it's going in through the mucous membranes or the wet membranes in your nose, in your mouth, around your eyes, because the surface of those membranes have cells that are alive. So it's very important. Remember, don't touch your face and always keep washing your hands. Another thing is how you can help deactivate them or get rid of the viruses or bacteria. Now, for most viruses, they're actually pretty fragile things. They will be destroyed by a lot of things, for example, alcohol, bleach, even UV rays. But most viruses will be destroyed by heating it to about 85 degrees Celsius for 1 minute. So you don't have to worry too much about viruses in your food because once you cook it, most of them will be destroyed. I can't, however, say the same thing about bacteria. There are multiple different types of bacteria. Some bacteria will be inactivated by heat, but then other bacteria will require more heat and even boiling them for some time to kill them, especially some bacteria or bacterial spores that cause the foodborne illnesses. They're actually really good at resisting high temperatures. When it comes to surfaces, most viruses don't survive for long on surfaces. However, this will differ between different types of bacteria of viruses. Whereas bacteria can survive on surfaces for months, and the spores of bacteria, some of them can survive for even years. Now, especially during this time, a lot of people might be worrying about the differences between the new virus COVID-19 versus the cold or the flu, especially because it just happened around flu season. So a lot of people, they might get a little bit of a headache, they might get a sore throat, they might get a stuffy nose, and then suddenly they're worrying, do I have COVID-19? So I'd like to go over some of the differences and hopefully put your minds at ease. Now, when it comes to fever, this is actually pretty common in COVID 19, but it's not so common in the cold. But you do also find it in a fever. When it comes to headache, general aches and pains, fatigue, weakness, or even extreme exhaustion, you don't really find it so much in this new virus. You can find a headache sometimes in a cold and then more commonly in a flu. All of these things, I'm sure people have had the flu before. When you get the flu, you get a headache, you feel terrible all over, you ache everywhere, and you feel really, really tired, right? Now, sometimes you get it with COVID 19, but it's not as common. When it comes to the very typical cold symptoms, for example, a stuffy nose, sneezing, sore throat, then it's not so common in this new virus, but it is more common in the cold. You can sometimes find it in the flu as well. When it comes to a cough, now this is one of those symptoms that you can find throughout all three of these diseases. For example, it's more common during COVID 19. You can find it in the cold and you can find it in the flu as well. Now, when it comes to shortness of breath or feeling like it's difficult to breathe, this can happen in COVID 19, especially in more serious infections, but it is far less common in the cold or the flu. This is because COVID 19 is a virus that attacks the lower respiratory tract, meaning that it goes into deeper into your lungs. Whereas for the other illnesses, the cold or flu, they more affect the upper respiratory tract. So more of your sinuses here. That's why you can get stuffy noses or sneezing or sore throat more commonly with the cold or the flu because it's affecting the upper respiratory tract. Now, because COVID 19 affects the lower respiratory tract, you can get the issues of finding it very difficult to breathe. Now, runny nose is an upper respiratory tract symptom, so it is more common in the cold or the flu, and you rarely find it in COVID 19. Diarrhea is something as well. You can sometimes find it in COVID 19. You don't really find it in the cold. And for the flu, you can sometimes find it, but mostly in children. Now, another new symptom that has been popping up lately is losing your sense of smell. Now, this is very interesting because there have been reports from doctors around the world of them finding that a good proportion of their COVID 19 patients have lost their sense of smell. And they say that sometimes this can be the only symptom that they're finding in their patients. So, for this loss of sense of smell, now this is not something that is really unique to COVID 19. You can also find it in the cold and the flu, but it's not very common. You can also find it in other instances, for example, other things that might affect your sinuses or even trauma. Now, what comes with this loss of the sense of smell is often also the loss of the sense of taste because the two of them go together. So it is an unusually high proportion of patients so far, doctors are finding, are losing their sense of smell. And it is something that we should take with a grain of salt because losing the sense of smell is something that is a bit hard to track because it's not something that doctors will monitor regularly. It's more of a chance finding, more of an off thing of a patient mentioning, hey, I've noticed, doctor, that I can't smell anything anymore. I can't smell my morning coffee. Or they might complain that their sense of taste is not quite the same. And for patients as well, it can also be something that they don't really notice. Like you don't know when exactly it will happen. Just one day they notice, hey, why can't I smell my coffee anymore? So it is something that we can all keep in mind as well, losing the sense of smell and together with it, the sense of taste. Now, luckily for us, this is one of those things that is really easy to test at home. One of the things we often ask patients when we're trying to screen for a loss of a sense of smell is asking them, do you still smell your coffee? Can you still smell oranges? Another thing they can do is that they can plug their nose up to test your sense of taste. You block their nose, you eat something, you should still be able to taste something there. For example, something sweet or sour or bitter, you should still be able to tell. And then as you're chewing, you just release your nose and you should get the flood of flavor. And that's when you know you haven't lost your sense of taste. Now, before we move on to the next question, I want to firstly address some questions that people may have about COVID 19. Now, there's been a lot of news going around about asymptomatic carriers of COVID 19 and how they can spread the virus without knowing. Now, there's a difference between asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic. Someone who's truly asymptomatic means that they can have the virus, but they never ever show any symptoms whatsoever. They're always perfectly well. Now, people who are like that are truly asymptomatic. They never develop any symptoms whatsoever. However, someone who is pre symptomatic is someone who has the virus, but they don't have any symptoms yet. Now, a lot of people might have seen the news articles where a lot of health officials might have gone, we have tested this many people, and this many people don't have any symptoms at all. And it seems like a huge proportion of the people they have tested don't have any symptoms. Well, and then you start to worry because, well, how are we supposed to contain this virus if we don't know who has it without any testing? Well, you don't have to worry too much because so far from all of the testing and the models that they've done, most of the people who don't have symptoms at the time of testing, meaning that the vast majority do go on to develop symptoms. However, with this virus, researchers know that these people who don't have symptoms yet but have the virus, they're still capable of spreading the virus around. So it's still very important to practice basic hygiene. And especially now that we know that asymptomatic carriers or pre-symptomatic carriers play a large role in spreading this disease around, when you go out, be sure to wear a mask because you don't know if you have the virus. So, to protect other people from the droplets that you might be giving off, it's better to wear a mask. Another thing that people might be asking is why, well, in the earlier news articles, a lot of people are saying, well, we don't have to worry too much, or us young people, we don't have to worry too much because it's mostly elderly people who are dying of this virus, mostly the people who have pre existing health conditions, for example, diabetes. They already have respiratory problems or they have heart disease, and that's why they are dying of this virus. But then, as time goes on, we're getting more and more reports of young people dying. For example, of young healthcare workers, they're only in their 30s who have died of this disease, and even some cases of some people even younger. Now you might be wondering, why is it that some young people will die and not others? Now, when you're looking at the cases of healthcare workers, we have to keep in mind these people have been working nonstop to protect the rest of us from the virus. And because they're working so closely with all of these patients, and they're exhausted as well. So they are coming into contact with a much higher viral load than the normal person. Now, you can think of a viral load as how much of a virus someone is getting, like how big of a dose of a virus. When you get a virus, it's a sort of a race between the virus and your immune system. The virus will enter into your body and it takes some time to replicate and get up. And as it goes up, your immune system will be there and it will detect the virus, and your immune system will ramp up its activity as well to help get rid of your virus for you. But if you're like a healthcare worker and you're exposed to all of these people who have the virus, there's a good chance that you're going to get a huge dose at once. So then instead of starting out here, the virus is starting up here, and it doesn't take a lot for it to ramp up its activity and replicate. Whereas your immune system is still starting at its original place. It still has to detect it, still has to ramp up its response. So some people believe that it's because of the viral load. They get so much more of it. So the virus gets a head start in their bodies. And that's why some of them are succumbing to this disease. Now, another question people might ask me is, if I get the virus and I recover and I don't have any symptoms anymore, can I be reinfected? Will I be immune to this virus? You might have seen these news reports as well. Some people who have been released from hospital, who have tested negative for the virus, and may go on to then test positive again for this virus. Now, for it is possible, but thankfully these cases are still very rare, and that's why they make the news, because they're very rare. Now, most of the time when you recover, you probably have antibodies to the virus, so you do have some degree of immunity. But experts don't know how long this immunity might last. It might last for, just a couple of months. It might last for years. It might last for a lifetime, but we still don't know yet. Now, another question is, are these people, have they truly gotten rid of the virus? Was the testing wrong? Or has the virus just lied dormant inside their bodies? And then as they get out, it just reactivates again. Now, all of these things we still don't know yet. So we still have to conduct further research and keep an eye out for all of these things. Another thing that has also been making its round in the news is something called a cytokine storm. Now, a lot of my friends and even my sister has been asking me, what exactly is a cytokine storm and how does it play into this virus or this illness? And is it different from an autoimmune disease? Because I've been seeing some things going around the internet going, well, because of the cytokine storm, a strong immune system is actually something you want to avoid. So I really want to take some time to correct this misunderstanding. All of us, we want a strong immune system because so far there is no treatment that can get rid of this virus. There is no cure for this virus. There is still no vaccine for this virus. So the only thing we have to depend on is our own immune system. All of the treatments that doctors are doing in hospital at the moment, it's not anything that will help kill the virus or get rid of it. Most of the treatments so far are supportive treatments, meaning they're supporting your own body to help get rid of the virus. Now, what is a cytokine storm? Now, a lot of people, it's been explained simply in a lot of news articles as the immune system gone haywire or a response of the immune system to the virus. So I can understand why people get this misunderstanding that a strong immune system is something that's bad, because they believe that, well, if a cytokine storm is the result of your immune system reacting to the virus, and that is what is causing problems, then why do we want a strong immune system? We want a strong immune system because it gets rid of the virus for us. Without a strong immune system, you're not getting rid of the virus. That is why elderly people with health conditions, that's why they are the ones falling victim to this disease, because their immune system isn't that strong, because they already have problems going on. So their body, the systems in their body are overwhelmed. Now, for a lot of things, when it comes to the immune system, it's not just a matter of strong or weak. Our immune system is really, really complicated. So, what happens during a cytokine storm is that when your immune system meets something foreign, like a foreign invader, it will release all sorts of chemicals to call the immune system to battle. These chemicals are cytokines. So your immune system will release cytokines so that your body knows there is something there that we need to get rid of. But a cytokine storm, what happens then is that you have too many cytokines being released. So if you have too many cytokines being released, then the response of the immune system is that it will send more and more and more soldiers because it believes that there is a bigger battle that it needs to fight. So the problem here isn't a strong or a weak immune system. It is the control mechanism of your immune system is broken. There is something wrong because for a normal immune system, it knows when to start the battle, but more importantly, it also knows when to stop a battle. And it is this stopping mechanism that has gone wrong, right? So a lot of we don't know why exactly a cytokine storm will happen. But we do know it's because there is something wrong stopping the immune system. Your immune system doesn't know when to stop. So this is why a lot of the times doctors, we won't just stimulate an immune system when it doesn't need to, because we as doctors, we still don't have any way of controlling the immune system. We may be able to stimulate the immune system, but then we can't guarantee that we'll be able to tell it to stop either. It's the same thing with immunosuppressant drugs. We may be able to suppress the immune system, there's no guarantee that the immune system will be able to bounce back because we don't have that full control over the immune system yet. Right? So when it comes to a cytokine storm, it's still very important to take care of our immune system. Because when we take care of our immune system, it's not just making it stronger or weaker, it's not just making it strong, it's also making sure that all of the really complicated mechanisms that control our immune response are working properly as well. Another thing that people might ask is, how long will this pandemic last? I have had a lot of people ask me this. Now, we still don't know. The only way we can be sure to say it is the end there is when we have a vaccine. That is the only way we can be 100% sure. But unfortunately, a vaccine is still a bit of time away. Because if you think about it, for a vaccine to work, we're going to have to vaccinate most of the people, most of the population. So we do want to take our time to make sure that the vaccine we develop, the vaccine that we will eventually give to most of the population, is actually safe to use. So that will take a little bit of time. But we still don't know how long exactly this pandemic will last. I've seen some experts tell us that the peak will arise in May. I've heard some people say that, oh, when the weather gets warmer, the virus will just go away. But as we all know, people here living in Singapore, in Malaysia, where it's perpetually warm, where it's perpetually humid, we know that's probably not going to happen. All right. Now, there is some validity to that. For example, when it is very, very humid, viral particles have a tougher time moving through the air because as it moves through the humidity of the air, it can get loaded with water particles and just drift to the ground because it gets heavier. Right? But this is no guarantee that it will be enough to actually stop a pandemic. There have also been some experts saying that because COVID 19 is so poorly contained, it might become endemic, meaning that instead of a yearly flu season, there's a chance that we might get a yearly flu and COVID season. Now, hopefully, this won't be the case, but we can see from past pandemics that it might. For example, SARS was very well contained because well, with SARS, the people who got SARS, they got ill very quickly. They had very bad symptoms. And because they had all of these symptoms, they were very easy to pinpoint who exactly had it and to treat them and to quarantine them. Whereas with the current illness, we have so many people who don't have any symptoms or they might be spreading the disease before they get symptoms. So it's very, very difficult to contain. And you can see it from the past pandemics. For example, swine flu was a previous pandemic, and swine flu has actually become endemic, meaning that it does come back. But because of the mutations that swine flu has had, it comes back in a much weaker form. So it's not really something to be worried about. And we can't say the same thing will happen with COVID 19, but we can hope. Right? So for now, we still want to comply with the measures that all of the countries are taking to help contain this virus and just take take what control we do have. We do want to take proper hygiene methods. We do want to protect ourselves and to protect the people around us. But we do also want to prepare ourselves because it might be a while before everything goes back to normal. Another thing people might ask are that what are the treatments available for COVID 19? Now, so far, there is no specific treatment that doctors can use to treat COVID 19, but there are a lot of drugs that are being researched so far. Now, we can split them into three broad categories. For example, there's drugs that will target the virus replication. So, drugs that will help stop the virus from replicating or stop the virus from entering into its target cell to begin with. The second category of treatments that a lot of researchers are looking into is how to prime the immune system to better be able to get rid of the virus for you. For example, some drugs might be able to stimulate the natural killer cells to help go after the virus, or the other immune cells to go after the virus. Another thing that's looking very promising so far is looking for antibodies in people who have recovered from this virus and hopefully be able to either produce these antibodies on a large scale or be able to get them from the people who have recovered and give it to people who are very severely ill. Now, there are some drugs that have been making their round in the news. For example, tocilizumab, which will interfere with interleukin 6, which is a chemical that helps stimulate the immune response. So it helps mute the immune response. And doctors are thinking that it might be able to help people who have cytokine storms. Another one is Anakira, and it works in a very similar way, but it affects interleukin 1. There are clinical trials going on at the moment. And then there's another one, an anti-malarial drug, hydroxychloroquine. Now, this has been making its round in the news lately due to someone who is very, very well known talking about it a lot on the news, on Twitter, across the ocean. So it's making its way around the news quite a lot. And people are saying, you know what, maybe this is our miracle cure. But we do have to take it with a grain of salt because I've been seeing a lot of people saying, you know what, this drug has been used in a lot of people. It's used to treat a lot of autoimmune diseases, for example, lupus. And a lot of people say that it is a drug that's completely safe to take. There are no side effects. Well, I do want to correct this misunderstanding because every drug always has a side effect. There are always risks to taking any medication. And with this medication, the side effects are rare, but they are severe. For example, the severe side effects are heart toxicity. It can cause toxicity to your nerves and it can affect your retina as well and affect your vision. So it is not something that can be taken without any concern whatsoever. In addition, all of the research going into this drug is very mixed as well. For example, one of the latest trials done has shown that this drug doesn't actually help COVID 19 patients at all. Now, another question that people might ask me is how long can this virus survive on surfaces? For example, they say, do I need to be concerned about food takeaway? Do I need to be concerned about my phone? Well, it depends on the type of the surface and the environmental conditions as well. For example, in lab studies, we have to remember that lab conditions are very specifically controlled. Right? They have these surfaces and they keep it pristine in the laboratory controlled condition because they do want to eliminate all the other variables. Right? So when you're looking at these lab results, what researchers have found. They have found that when they put this virus onto plastic, they found that over a half of the SARS-CoV-2 particles broke apart in a couple of hours, for example, 6 to 7 hours. But if they put it onto something like stainless steel or glass, then it survives for a bit shorter amount of time, about 5.6 hours. Whereas if they put it onto cardboard, then it's another amount of time. But then we have to remember, well, when in the real world conditions, nothing is as controlled, right? So if you have it on stainless steel, for example, outside on the guardrails anywhere, or pressing the button next to the sidewalk, you have to remember there is air moving about. There's wind, there's rain, there's the UV rays from the sun. And we all know that UV rays, viruses and bacteria, they don't really like UV rays at all. And what the CDC has said is that surface contamination is not the main way this virus spread. The main way it spread is via person to person contact. All right, so that's the main way it is spread. When it comes to surfaces, all you have to do is just have to practice basic hygiene. You want to wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water. All right, and if you don't have access to soap and water, then you can use something like an alcohol-based disinfectant. Right? The most important thing to keep in mind is that it's not so much surface contamination you have to worry about, it's more person to person contact. When it comes to food delivery services, now there haven't been any cases so far of someone getting this virus because of their food delivery. So it's not something you have to be super worried about. You also have to think about it. When you get an illness, it also depends on the viral load or how much of a virus you get. And when it comes to food delivery, so even if the person preparing your food has the virus and they manage to get it onto the food or onto the packaging of the food, then you have to remember it passes through so many hands, it passes through so many people before it gets to you. And each time it passes through those people, a little bit of the virus will be transferred to some other surface. A little bit of the virus will be wiped away. And like I mentioned before, when you have all of this food, all you have to do is you have to heat it up to about 85 degrees Celsius, and then the virus will be deactivated, right? So it's not something you have to be particularly worried about.
Dr. EE, will there be more new viruses occurring in the future?
So when it comes to new viruses coming up, well, there will always be new viruses coming up. That is just the nature of the world we are living in now. Now, a lot of things have changed in human history, which has led to more frequent outbreaks of epidemics and now a pandemic. Now, for a lot of these new viruses, most of them will arise in animals. For example, pigs or birds or mammals or monkeys or bats or snakes, or really any animal at all could have a virus. But most of the time, these viruses are the type of viruses that only affect animals and they don't make the jump to humans. For example, researchers estimate that birds and mammals can harbor anywhere from over 600,000 to more than 800,000 unknown viruses. Now, there are a lot of experts that make it their goal. They make it their living to track down these viruses, to identify each and every one, to scan for infected animals in farms, and to control all of these bushmeat markets to prevent these viruses from making the jump to humans. But this can be very, very difficult, right? Because they don't know. And a lot of the times it's impossible to keep track of that many animals. It's impossible to keep track of that many viruses. And even then, it's impossible to predict which ones will make the jump from animal to human. Now, even long known viruses, so for example, Zika. Zika was discovered in 1947. So it's not something that is new. It's been around for a while, but even then, no one would have predicted the epidemic that sprung up with Zika. So even with viruses that we know about, it can be very, very difficult to predict which ones will give us a problem. There's also the matter of the way that we are living now. We live on a hyper-connected planet. Now, a lot of people might think that because we live on a hyper-connected planet, because All of our technology is advancing because we're so closely intertwined, and our modern medicine is advancing as well. We are more prepared to handle a pandemic or an epidemic than ever before, when in reality, that is not entirely true. For example, because we live so closely together, because our travel is so intertwined, for example, if you sit on a plane, there is nowhere on earth that is more than a 36-hour flight away. All right, so you can get from here to around anywhere in the world at all just by hopping on a plane. Whereas before, if there was an epidemic, it might be contained just because there is no one moving in and out of that area. It might be contained just because of its geography, right? But that's not so much the case anymore. Now, geography is no longer such a strong limiting factor as it was before for containing epidemics, because people, they travel around all the time. Not to mention that our human population is exploding. We have jumped to billions and billions of people. And because of that, because our human population is exploding, we're also spreading out more. And because of that, we're also encroaching into the territory of animals. So, more than before, we are living very, very close to wild animals. Right? And most of the viruses that will cause a lot of trouble in humans will come from animals. Because they come from animals and they mutate and jump to humans, it causes a lot of trouble for us because they're so different from what we are used to. So we have no immunity whatsoever. It's something that our body will not be able to defend against because it's so alien to us. That's why most of the really bad viruses in history have come from animals. For example, SARS or MERS, they have all come from animals. The bird flu was deadly and it jumped from birds to humans, right? So, and not to mention that ever since 2008, the majority of the human population actually lives in cities. And we all know how densely populated cities are, right? So when it comes to all of these pandemics, all of these epidemics, now when someone gets sick with a new virus or there's a new epidemic that's popped up with a known virus, it's much, much easier for it to spread now because we're all packed together. And even when we're all packed together, our freedom of movement is such that it's so easy for one person to get infected and then travel somewhere else and then infect everyone there as well. We can see it in history. All right, this is not the first epidemic. This is not the first pandemic, and I doubt that it will be the last one. Now, when you look at the previous epidemics or pandemics, you can see that a lot of the countries have not prepared adequately for managing a pandemic or an epidemic. A lot of the time, their response is like a hole in the roof that you leave unfixed until you see storm clouds on the horizon. That's when people start scrambling to fix it all. Right? You can see it with all the other past pandemics. You can see it with SARS. You can see it with the swine flu. There's a cycle that every epidemic goes through. Right? So the first thing that happens is fear. A lot of people, they will see it and they get really afraid. They start to really, really worry about themselves. Not to mention that, especially during this pandemic, there was a lot of misinformation going around, and that will only complicate things for everyone. That makes it harder for people to know what is true and what is not true. And because so much false information is mixed together with the true information, it makes it more difficult to be able to know how you can protect yourself as well. Right? Because if you read something wrong, for example, you read something, oh, if I do this, then it will protect me. You might do something completely wrong and not actually go for the methods that actually do you some good. So that can do a lot of harm as well. All of this misinformation can also contribute to the fear that people can have around the pandemic. Right? So all of this also contributes to the pandemic. Now, another thing that we can see with past pandemics and this current pandemic is complacency and denial. There's a cycle that it goes through. It goes fear, everyone, they start to ramp up measures to help contain the virus. They ramp up measures to help contain the infections. But after a little bit of time, people start getting complacent. They start to be a bit more lax about the controls that people were using to help control the spread of the virus. Or in some cases, it can be flat out denial. It can be people saying, you know what, it's not that serious. You know what, I don't think that it will last, or something like that. When in reality, it is all of these measures that come into place, they should have been in place far, far before this will come up. A lot of the times, as we can see it even in human nature, we wait until there's a problem before we start taking steps to fix it. Isn't that right? We don't think about taking care of ourselves until we fall ill. For example, we don't think about losing weight until we have a reason to lose weight, until we look at our scale and we go, you know what? I've gained 5 kilograms over the month. I need to start losing weight. And that's when people will think to themselves, hey, maybe I should eat more vegetables. Or they wait until they see something that has happened to someone else. For example, they wait until a family member has gotten heart disease, or they wait until someone they know has gotten diabetes and they think to themselves, wait, what? What if that happens to me? And then they start taking the steps to change their lifestyle, to protect themselves. But at that point in time, as you can see, it's a little bit too little, too late. So these are some of the lessons that we can learn from this current pandemic, is that if we have a hole in the roof, we want to fix it right away. We don't want to wait until we see storm clouds on the horizon before we start scrambling to fix the hole. It's the same with our health. We don't want to wait until we can imagine ourselves having a problem, or wait until we have a problem before we start taking steps to improve our health.
Dr. EE, why do skincare products need preservatives and what make them spoil?
All right, when it comes to skincare products, a lot of people, they want all natural skincare products. They don't want their skincare products to contain any preservatives at all, because they are under this idea that having no preservatives is actually healthier for their skin, when in reality, this isn't actually 100% true. Now, skincare products, they do require preservatives, because a lot of skincare products, they contain a lot of goodness that's meant for your skin. But because it's a skincare product, you open it up, it will be exposed to bacteria. For example, you might dip your fingers in to put the lotion on your face, right? Even just opening it up will expose the skincare products to the air, and the air has bacteria as well. Right? So the preservatives are there inside skincare products to prevent bacterial contamination. Because in the end, bacterial contamination is much more dangerous to you than the preservatives inside the skincare product. All right? Because the bacteria, if it's allowed to grow unchecked in your products, and then you just wipe it all over your face, right? And you're going to start to have problems. You might have a flare up of any pre-existing skin conditions you already have. For example, eczema, psoriasis. You might start getting acne. You might start getting dermatitis or rashes there, and that's something that we buy skincare products to avoid, isn't it? So when it comes to skincare products, we want to balance these things. We do want preservatives because we want to make sure there are no bacteria growing inside of it.
Many of us had gained weight. Some people might turn to unhealthy or extreme measure to lose weight. What can we do to safely lose all that weight?
All right, so to help me out, I have another PPT. All right. So when it comes to losing weight, a lot of people, especially during this isolation time, right? You're stuck at home. You can't go out and exercise, and you're stressed all the time. So what do? You snack and you eat a lot, especially comfort food, right? Comfort food always makes us feel better. So a lot of people might be thinking, how do I lose weight? And because they want to lose weight, they might turn to some shortcuts as well. But first, let's look at obesity. Now, why is obesity a problem? Now, cancer is the second most common cause of death in the world, right after heart disease. And more than 1 in 20 cancer cases in the UK are caused by being overweight. The more overweight someone is, the higher the risk, right? It actually increases the risk of 13 different types of cancers. That includes two of the most common, breast and bowel, as well as three of the hardest to treat, pancreatic, esophageal, and the gallbladder cancer. It also increases the risk of heart disease and diabetes. For example, people with diabetes are 2 to 4 times more likely to have heart disease, right? Now, when it comes to obesity, it's not just adults we need to think about. Unfortunately, we also have to think about children as well, because unfortunately, especially in Asia, the percentage of overweight children have been increasing a huge amount. In fact, the percentage of the population that is overweight can be more than a quarter in some countries. And especially when it comes to the Southeast Asian countries, for example, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, we're among the most overweight when it comes to children in Southeast Asia. In fact, the percentage of obese children has increased by 150%. All right, so it's not just our own weight we have to worry about, it's our children's weight as well. Because when children are overweight, it is very, 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 very common that they go on to become overweight adults as well. So it's something that we want to nip in the bud. Now, a lot of the methods that people use to lose weight they don't exactly work very well. For example, a lot of people, we all know that losing weight is really hard. So a lot of people, they might take shortcuts to lose weight. They might start taking weight loss pills. And one of the most popular ones so far is something called a lipase inhibitor. Now, how this works is that it reduces the activity of a type of enzyme called lipase. And lipase is the enzyme that helps break down fat. Now, the logic is if lipase doesn't work, then the fat isn't broken down, which means that less fat is absorbed, right? Right. So, when it comes to this sort of weight loss pill, the way it works is that it has the strongest effect when most of the calories you consume come from fat to begin with. But honestly, if you're eating that much fat, if you just cut down on the amount of fat that you're eating, it will actually have better weight loss effects than taking a pill on top of that, isn't it? A lot of people, they look at this weight loss pill and they think it's very attractive because they think to themselves, I can eat what I love to eat and still lose weight, right? Well, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Right? So when you look at this, and this is from the manufacturer's own research, the average weight loss is only about 2 to 3 kilograms a year. All right, that's about 0.16 to 0.25 kilograms a month. All right, that is less than a can of soda. So taking this pill, you don't actually lose that much weight to begin with. And when you're looking at this weight loss, right, it's not just taking the pill alone. Okay, it's taking the pill along with exercise. Right? So it's not a super effective way of losing weight. And even if you do take this pill, what happens is that when people stop the pill, all of their weight tends to come back. All right, that's because you never learned healthy eating habits to begin with. You just relied entirely on a pill to help you lose weight. And for most people, they don't actually stay on the pill long term because the side effects are terrible. All right, it can cause oily spotting in the inside of your underwear. Because if you think about it, if you're not absorbing any fat, then whatever fat you eat has to come out the other side, right? So a lot of the side effects will be oily spotting. You can get fecal incontinence. You get flatulence with discharge. You can have abdominal cramping as well. And in some cases, they can have very severe effects, such as liver failure and kidney damage as well. So it's not something that we want to rely on for losing weight. Now, another thing that people use for losing weight are laxatives. Now, they think that if they take laxatives and they get rid of all the food material that's in their body, then they can lose weight, you know? But laxatives don't actually stop your body from absorbing calories at all. Laxatives work in your lower GI tract. And by that point, your calories have already been absorbed. Okay, so it's not helping there. It's not getting rid of any calories. So if you take a lot of laxatives and you lose weight, most of the weight you lose is the weight of the stool movement and water weight, right? So the side effects of laxatives are also not something that we can dismiss. For example, if you take too many laxatives, you lose a lot of water. And with that water, you lose a lot of important electrolytes as well. And electrolytes are needed for your muscles and your nerves to function properly. If you abuse laxatives, there's a chance of it damaging the intestines. It may increase the risk of colon cancer. And if you use it on a regular basis, it may induce dependence on the laxatives, right? So laxatives are not evil. If you have really bad constipation, you can consider using laxatives, but it's not something that is effective for losing weight. Another thing is bulimia. Now, bulimia is different from anorexia. It is a condition where people binge and purge. Right? When I say binge and purge, it is when they binge, they eat a lot. They eat whatever they want, and then they feel terrible afterwards. They feel a lot of guilt, and then they purge all of that food. Now, the purge can be either vomiting it back up or taking a lot of laxatives to get rid of everything that they've eaten. Now, with bulimia, it doesn't help with weight loss because your body is actually really efficient at absorbing nutrients and absorbing calories. So, a lot of the times, all right, even if they throw it back up, even if they use laxatives, a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the calories, it's already been absorbed. So, it doesn't actually help with weight loss. And it can also cause significant harm as well. For example, heartburn, low blood pressure, stomach intestinal problems, loss of bone density, infertility, kidney failure, hair loss or thinning, and it can even contribute to tooth decay because if you're always vomiting back up, then the stomach acid will erode your tooth enamel. A lot of people will also look towards fasting for losing weight. This is also not effective, unfortunately. So after fasting, people can be very hungry, so they can tend to eat a lot more. Now, it can be a quick way of losing weight. It can be a crash diet. If you stop eating, you're not going to take in any calories, so you will lose weight. But it's not a very healthy method for losing weight, and it's not very sustainable because as soon as you start eating normally, most of the weight loss will tend to come right back. Because again, if someone is relying on fasting for losing weight, they didn't take the time or the effort to develop healthy eating patterns to begin with. Right? And when it comes to fasting as well, if you're not eating anything, yes, you're not eating any calories as well, but you're also not taking in nutrients that your body may need. So the best method for losing weight is actually coming up with a sustained method, something that you can keep up for the rest of your life. You want something that isn't just stop and starting on and off. You want something that is sustainable. So you want to change your lifestyle. You want to change your diet overall so that you are having a more healthy diet. Now, part of the healthy diet is a lot of misinformation around as well. For example, a lot of diets will say you have to avoid carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are evil. But there's actually there's no need to avoid carbohydrates because carbohydrates are not inherently harmful. Now, a lot of people will avoid carbohydrates to lose weight because if you look at the calories on carbs, for example, your bread, your rice, your noodles, they can have a lot of calories and they're very calorie dense. All right, so a lot of people will say avoid carbohydrates. But then when they avoid carbohydrates, they may replace it with more unhealthy foods, for example, high fat foods such as meats or fats or bacons or eggs. When in reality, you don't really need to. It's not so much of avoid it entirely, it's exercise self control. You can eat carbohydrates, but just don't go eating like an entire loaf of bread at once. All right, it's just keep in mind the calories that you're taking in. And in fact, according to research presented at the European Society of Cardiology Congress, a low carbohydrate diet can actually have some harm. It may increase the risk of death from various diseases, for example, heart disease by 51%, stroke by 50%, or cancer by 35%. So the key to losing weight is actually just monitoring calories in versus calories out. If you eat more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. If you eat less calories than you burn, you're going to lose the weight. Right? It's as simple as that. The hard part is keeping track of the calories that you're eating. So when you keep track of the calories, you have to be able to know, well, how much is my body burning? And to do that, you need to take into account your size, how tall you are, how old you are, your current weight, and your level of activity a day. Right? So let's have a look at some foods to show you how hard it is to control the amount of calories. Now, a lot of people will eat a lot of foods and they vastly underestimate how many calories they have. So let's look at this. A big breakfast with regular hotcakes. The calories is 1,090. All right, that's about half of how much you should be eating a day. Fries, 510. If you wanted to burn this off, you'd have to walk more than 10,000 steps. All right, so it's much easier to not eat it than to eat it and then try to burn it off. All right, two-piece chicken set, 1,500 calories. Extra crispy breast, 490 calories. An entire pizza. This is more calories than you need in an entire day. Ribeye steak, 1,340 calories. Noodles, 1,000 calories. Braised pork bento, 940 calories. One meat dumpling, 770 calories. And how many people stop at one? Fried dough fritter, just one of them is 450 calories. A mooncake is 1,000 calories. So during mooncake season, what you need to do is you need to take your mooncake and then cut it up into 10 pieces. That way you know every piece has 100 calories. Now, if you have baked mooncake with lotus seed paste, it doesn't matter what sort of mooncake you eat. All of them are about 1,000 calories. Chocolate chip cookies, one piece, 160 calories. One pineapple bun, 280. Bread, one piece is 75 calories. Cheesecake, 1,330. Iced milk tea. How many people will have milk tea with every meal? It's 450 calories. So it's something that should be a treat. All right, it's not an accompaniment to every meal. Chocolate chip cookie dough milkshake, 1,600 calories. Now we're moving on to the so-called healthier options. One cup of apple juice is 110 calories. Orange juice is all about the same. Coffee latte, 220 calories. This is without the flavored syrups, okay? Coffee Americano, it's only 15 calories. Now, what's the difference between an Americano and a latte? One has a milk in it, and that can add on a lot of calories. Vegetable oil, one spoon is 120 calories, right? And how many will just pour on the oil like it's nothing? Skinless chicken breast is 120 calories. Salmon, 140 calories. Celery, only 15 calories. Cabbage, 15. Kale, about 20 calories. Mangoes have a little bit more calories because they're sweet, 130 calories. Kiwi fruits, 45. An apple, 80 calories. So what we need for healthy weight management is to just keep in mind the real amount of calories we have in our food. Right? And to help get rid of that feeling of feeling hungry all the time, what you can do is look at the food that have less calories, because you want food that is less calorie dense. Then you can eat a lot of it while still taking in fewer calories. Now, another thing you can consider eating more of is protein, because protein will help you feel full for longer. Now, you want to get your protein not from animal sources, because animal sources can have fat and cholesterol that we want to avoid, but more from plant sources such as soybean. Another thing we can take in more of is fiber, because fiber helps curb hunger pains and it helps you reduce the unhealthy intake of unhealthy foods. You also want to eat a wide variety of vegetables as well.
Dr. EE, talking about weight, a lot of people view exercise as key to losing weight. Is this true? What else can exercise do for us?
So when a lot of people look at exercise, they will think of exercise as something that is key to helping them lose weight. When in fact, when you're looking at exercise, it's not super effective for losing weight, but we do want exercise to help keep our body and our heart strong. That is one of the most important things, to help keep our heart strong. So we do want the two of them together: exercise to keep our heart strong, and diet and to help us lose weight. So when it comes to exercise, you don't actually burn as many calories as you might think. For example, if you jog for an hour, you only burn 350 calories. Cycling, 240. Walking, only 150 for 1 hour. Tai Chi, 240. All right. So when you're looking at all of these exercises, what is best is to not take in the calories to begin with. Another thing exercise can help with is lower back pain. About 80% of people will experience lower back pain, and it's actually more common in people who don't exercise regularly. Because when you look at our back, it's not just the strength of our bones, but it's also the strength of the muscles around our bones as well that helps support our lower back. So, most of the time, for people who have lower back pain, it is because they don't have a strong support system for their back, right? And we exercise is something that we want to do on a regular basis. For example, people who only go out and exercise on the weekends are actually more likely to have lower back pain because they spent their entire week sitting around. And then when they go exercise on the weekends, they think, you know what, I have to make up for my week of laziness. So they go really, really hard and then they strain themselves. Right? So it's something, exercise is something that we want to keep up every day. Now, being overweight also puts more strain on the back, so we want to help control our weight. Now, for these exercises, it's exercises anyone can do, especially if you're very new to starting out on exercising. All of the exercises to help strengthen your back, it is something that you can do even at home because a lot of them can be just body weight exercises, especially when you're starting out. But the most important thing to remember is that you want to look at how to do them right. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your back nice and straight, right? You're not slouching while trying to do your exercises because in doing that, you're putting strain on the wrong parts of your back. So remember, if you're doing back strengthening exercises, keep your back nice and straight, and you can start out just with body weight. Exercise can help slow down aging as well. Now, look at this picture of the two mice. Now, these two mice were genetically engineered to age faster. The only difference between them is that one mouse exercised and the other one did not. I'm sure you can guess which mouse did its exercise and which one did not. Exercise also boosts your lymphatic system. Now, your immune cells will move through the lymph, right? Your lymph is like your blood circulatory system, but unlike your blood, you don't have a heart to pump your lymph around. Your lymph moves around your body through muscle contractions. So you want to keep up your muscle contractions to help keep your lymph moving. Exercise will also help post-surgery recovery. Regular exercise before and after surgery helps promote faster and better healing. In fact, when I was working in the ICU, we would have patients who just came in from open heart surgery. They were still on the tubes that were helping them breathe. But even then, we would get them out of the bed and have them walk up and down the ward. We'd have one person there to make sure they didn't fall over, another person there to help push the ventilatory machine as they move, because we know that getting them up and moving will actually help improve recovery. A lot of people think that you need to just lie in bed and rest to improve recovery, but you do have to keep moving. Now, everyone needs protein: children, the elderly, young people, everyone. Now, children actually require more protein per kilo than adults because they're still growing and they do need protein for normal growth and development. Elderly people, they still need protein, even if they're not exercising as much as before, because they have less muscle mass and strength. And this is a huge contributor to falls or the lack of mobility as they get older. So they do need more protein to help maintain the muscle mass and strength. And exercise enthusiasts, I'm sure you all know you want protein because protein is vital for muscle synthesis. There are a lot of different types of protein. For example, casein protein is about 80% of milk protein, but it tends to coagulate and it can be tough on your digestive system. Whey is a byproduct of the cheese making process. Now, both of these, they come from milk, and milk is not actually as healthy for us as you may think. For example, women who consumed 3 or more glasses of milk per day actually had a higher risk of death. Men who drank more milk per day had a slightly higher risk of death, mostly from heart disease. And a lot of milk products are associated with more oxidative stress, which can contribute to chronic diseases like heart disease. Soy protein isolate is protein that's taken from soy, but it's isolated and they only take the protein. So it's missing all of the other nutrients that soy has to offer. Now, in my opinion, wholesome soy is the best protein. It has a protein content double that of meat, triple that of eggs, and 12 times that of milk. And in addition to the protein, you're also getting a wide variety of phytonutrients. So it's something that you really want to consider. Not just getting the protein, but getting all of the other nutrients as well. Now, a lot of people believe that if they eat too much protein, they will cause burden on their kidneys. All right, so proteinuria isn't actually caused by high protein intake. Proteinuria means protein in your urine. All right, so for normal, healthy adults, we will not get proteinuria from eating too much protein. Now, proteinuria is more of a concern in people who already have kidney disease and people who already know they have kidney disease because their kidneys have issues filtering already. Then, if they eat too much protein, they may start to get protein in their urine. But for healthy adults, even if you eat way above the recommended limit for protein, you will probably not get proteinuria. So it's not something you have to be concerned about.
Now we shall open the floor to the audience for questions. If you have any questions related to health that you would like to ask Dr. EE, please feel free to leave your comment in the live chat sessions. We have the first questions here. Dr. EE, may I know if masks are able to filter the viruses? Which mask is the most effective against this virus?
Now, when you're looking at different types of masks to filter out the virus, if you're looking at the normal mask, for example, the cloth mask or the surgical mask, they aren't actually capable of filtering out the virus because the virus is so, so small. It can actually pass straight through the mask and into your respiratory system. When you think about using these masks as well, they don't form an airtight seal around your face either. So, an air moves in the path of least resistance, right? So, if you breathe in, a lot of the air will go past the gaps around your mask in, where it doesn't go through any filters at all. So, for most of these common masks, like the cloth mask or the surgical mask, most of the utility from using them is to protect other people from you. Right? It's not so much protecting you from other people, but to protect other people from you. Because what these masks are capable of doing is to stop droplet spread. So as you talk, as you breathe, if you cough or sneeze, it helps keeps the droplets contained. So other people aren't exposed to your droplets. Now, when you're looking at the other, like more effective masks for filtering it, for example, the N95 mask, they may be able to filter some degree of the virus, but that depends on the size of the virus. For example, N95 masks, they are capable of filtering up to a certain size, and there's some research that suggests that this virus may be actually smaller than the size that they're able to filter. But for a lot of healthcare workers, it is something that they do want to use because they're exposed to so many people with the virus. And we do want them to be able to protect themselves. But it's not recommended for the general public because we want to preserve the supplies for the people who need it most, the healthcare workers, to protect them from getting the virus because they come into contact with so many more people. Whereas the chances of us coming into contact with the virus, just walking up and down the road, is not as high, right? And with these N95 masks, the most important thing to do is to get them fitted, right? They come in different sizes, and the process for getting them fitted is actually quite complicated, right? We also want to make sure that they are very tight fit and there's no leakage around the seal there, right? So maybe they're effective, but we do hope that our healthcare workers do get some benefit from them.
Dr. EE, what would be the best food or vitamins for immune system? Does all sort of vegetable and fruits good for our immune system?
So when it comes to our immune system, we want to take in a wide variety of different nutrients. It's not just one vegetable or one fruit. Like I mentioned before, all of these different nutrients, all of these different phytochemicals or phytonutrients, have they have different ways of helping your immune system out. For example, one nutrient might help out your NK cells, another nutrient might help out your T cells, another one might help out some other cell, your macrophages, or anything else. So there's not really any point of just focusing on one nutrient, because if you only focus on, for example, improving the function of your natural killer cells, and what about all the other cells there? Your immune system is a complicated system. It all works together. And if one part of that system fails, then that is the weakest point, and everything else will not function as well either. So when it comes to taking care of our immune system, we want to take care of it all. All right. It's like when we take care of our body as well. When you take care of your body, you want to take care of your entire body. You don't want to just focus on one organ, because everything is interconnected. And if you put all your focus on one thing and neglect the others, then it's not going to do you very much good either.
Dr. EE, we have a question from the audience. She said she have read from a research paper saying that mushroom can cause internal bleeding. Does this mean that we should not take any mushrooms?
Right. So there have been some research papers that will say that it's not just mushrooms. So when we say internal bleeding, the term used for a lot of research papers, they use not the word internal bleeding, but the word antiplatelet effects. Now, platelets are cells in your bloodstream that are responsible for clotting. So if you cut yourself and you get a scab afterwards, what's responsible for that scab formation is your platelets. All right. If your platelets don't work, then the scab doesn't form and you keep bleeding. All right. So that's why people are concerned that if some things have an antiplatelet effect, then it may cause excessive bleeding. But all of that also comes down to dosage as well. Right? When it comes to all of these things, people will always focus on mushrooms. And I don't know why exactly mushrooms, because there's a lot of food that will have antiplatelet effects. For example, lemons, leeks, garlic, scallions, ginger, tomato, grapefruit, some species of cactus as well will have antiplatelet effects. And it's not just one type of mushroom either. For example, shiitake mushroom, oyster mushrooms, a lot of different types of food will have antiplatelet effects. Now, when you're looking at antiplatelet effects, it's not automatically a bad thing. For example, people who have heart disease or have other cardiovascular problems or other vascular diseases, having an antiplatelet effect can actually be very beneficial for them. Because most of the time, for people who have vascular diseases or cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, the problem with them is that they're forming a lot of clots that they shouldn't be forming. So having an antiplatelet effect can actually be beneficial for them. It can actually help in heart diseases or other things. But for normal people, consuming lemons or leeks or mushrooms or garlic, tomato, grapefruits, cactuses, even if they do have antiplatelet effects, it's very unlikely that it will have any effect on the normal person. For example, if I eat a lot of ginger in my food, do I need to be worried that if I cut myself, I won't stop bleeding? No, I don't have to be worried about that, because your body is very good at compensating for it. And it's also all about the dosage as well and the length of time you take it. For a lot of these research papers, it's not researchers, they don't write it as if it's a warning for other people. They don't write it as if, oh, this sort of food has an antiplatelet effect, so everyone has to avoid it. No, they don't write it like that. They write it as this food, oh, you know what? We found out something interesting. This food has an antiplatelet effect. So maybe if other researchers look at it and they're thinking of other ways to come up with a new medication or something else, they can look at this and go, hey, this seems promising. Maybe we can get a new medication from this sort of food. Because there's a lot of medications that come from natural plants. For example, aspirin comes from a type of bark. Digoxin, a type of heart medication for controlling arrhythmias, comes from foxglove. We have a lot of medications that will come from natural sources of food. But again, it's all about the dosage and the length of time. For example, when the difference between a food and a drug is that a drug has taken a specific compound, they have concentrated it, they know exactly what dosage you need to cause a particular effect. Whereas a food is a food, you eat it for the nutrition, right? And when it comes to all of these research experiments as well, they're done in very controlled environments. They do it inside a lab. They might do it in a petri dish as well. And they might look down the microscope and see this effect that might be happening in a petri dish or even in the animal model. What we all know by now is that results that they find in a lab in these controlled environments, they don't always translate to the human body because our human body has a lot more variables. It is not exactly a controlled environment. So we can't say that just because it has this result in our lab will definitely mean that it has this result inside the human body. Right? So it's not just antiplatelet effects that I've had people come ask me about. Another thing that people will ask me about is all about goitrogenic compounds. For example, they're concerned because goitrogenic compounds may inhibit the uptake of iodine by the thyroid gland. So people are worried that this may cause a goiter or a swelling in your neck here caused by the thyroid gland. Now people will say, oh, you know what? This sort of food will cause a goiter, so you can't eat it. But again, they always focus on certain types of food and they forget that there's a huge amount of plant foods that will contain goitrogenic compounds. For example, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, wasabi, mustard greens, turnips, daikon, strawberries, spinach. There's so much food that will contain goitrogenic compounds. Right? And again, it's a matter of perspective as well. People who look at this and they say, oh my gosh, if it inhibits iodine uptake, then it must be something bad, right? But it's not inherently bad. Right? It's not our job to assign a value to these research results. What these researchers are doing is that they're not publishing a warning. They're only saying, hey, this is something interesting that we found. So for people who, they already have issues with the thyroid gland and they want to cut down on the iodine uptake to help get rid of a goiter, this may be interesting for them. It may be interesting as a new avenue to develop a new type of drug or a new type of medication. Right? But for us, for normal people like us, we don't have to worry about this because, again, it's very, very unlikely that we will eat enough of a vegetable to have this sort of effect. A lot of the times, when they do these experiments, they take an extract or they take a super concentrated form of a particular thing from a mushroom or a piece of broccoli or anything else, and then they use that to do their experiments. But for us, for normal people with normal habits, I mean, honestly, I spend so much of my time trying to convince people to eat more vegetables, and that's hard enough, okay? If I can actually have an effect and convince people to eat that much to get that sort of effect, well, you know what? That made my job so much easier. Well, we have to look at the dosage. For example, there's been some articles as well saying that licorice can cause high blood pressure. If you read the headline, that's very misleading, right? Because yes, it's true, licorice can cause high blood pressure, but you have to eat something like more than 50 grams of licorice a day for more than 2 weeks to get that sort of effect. And even then, it's most pronounced in people who already have high blood pressure to begin with. All right, so that's a lot of licorice for someone. So if you're eating it normally, it's not a concern. All right, so when you look at all of these research papers, it's really important not to take it out of context. All right, and you have to remember that eating fruits and vegetables, eating more fruits and vegetables will actually have a far more beneficial effect on your health than avoiding it because you're concerned about something like an antiplatelet effect or a goitrogenic compound within these vegetables. It's far more beneficial for you to have the sort of dietary habit that includes all of these variety of vegetables.
Dr. EE, will stress release a hormone called cortisol? If yes, will the cortisol cause insulin resistance and result in diabetes and overweight?
Right, so stress will release a hormone called cortisol. Right, but the thing about cortisol is that it is not something that should be released constantly over long periods of time. And it does have some effect on the insulin regulation in your bodies. But when it comes to diabetes and being overweight, the main contributing factor there of getting diabetes is being overweight or having these unhealthy dietary habits to begin with. Now, stress can contribute to unhealthy dietary habits because you're stressed all the time. And when people are stressed, they're less likely to eat healthy foods because you're so tired. And it takes some effort to control your diet to eat healthy foods. And if you're tired all the time, if you're stressed all the time, then the allure of comfort food can sometimes be a little bit too much, isn't it? And if you're stressed all the time, the last thing you want to do is exercise, right? You just want to collapse on your couch, watch your shows, and just relax, right? So, in that way, it can contribute to being more overweight. But when it comes to diabetes, it's not cortisol that is the main contributing factor, but it's more of an entire lifestyle that contributes to the onset of diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes. All right, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes here. Main contributing factor there is not controlling the diet and becoming overweight, right? Because having a lot of fat in your body, especially interior fat, can actually increase insulin resistance, and it just causes a vicious cycle because insulin resistance in turn contributes to being overweight as well. So once you kick it off, it's very, very difficult to stop. All right. It's another reason why we have to take care of our health before there is a problem. Because once you get stuck in this vicious cycle of having insulin resistance and more fat and insulin resistance and more fat, it's something that's very difficult to change. So we all want to take a good look at our lifestyle and make these changes before we have a problem and not wait until we have a problem before trying to make these changes.
Dr. EE, intermittent diet is quite a popular trend now. Could you please advise about this and whether there are side effects of this?
So when it comes to intermittent diets, there's a lot of I have seen a lot of trends about these intermittent diets. Well, basically, what an intermittent diet is that there's a certain amount of time that you're allowed to eat, and a certain amount of time that you're not allowed to eat, where you fast for a bit of time. For every person, that might be different. For example, one person might go hours in a day; they're not allowed to eat. Another person might go, a few days out of the week; they're not allowed to eat. So when it comes to an intermittent diet, you can lose weight with it because you're not eating anything. Okay, if you're not eating any calories, you're going to lose weight. But whether or not it's a healthy way for losing weight is something that is more debatable. Because when it comes to all of this, yes, you're not eating any calories, but at the same time, you're also missing out on healthy nutrients that you do want to keep, that you do want to take in. Because, yeah, your body does need nutrients to keep going, right? And you also have to think about it. Is an intermittent diet, is it sustainable? Can you keep it up for the rest of your life? Because something called yo-yo dieting, in which you diet for a little bit and you stop dieting and you diet for a little bit and you stop dieting, it's actually more harmful to you than just not dieting to begin with. All right, that fluctuation of your weight going up and down is actually far more harmful to you than if you had never dieted to begin with. So when it comes to intermittent diets, it's more about you got to make sure if you're determined to do it, you got to make sure you're getting all the nutrients that you do need on the times that you're allowed to eat. And can you keep it up for the rest of your life? And if you're going to put in so much effort into not eating, and you're going to put into so much effort into planning your meals and making sure you're getting enough nutrients for the day, And why not just redirect that effort into making the sort of healthy diet that you're capable of eating? You can eat nutrients every day. You don't have to go through periods of being really hungry. And if you make these sort of changes, make these sort of daily changes to have a healthy diet all the time, it's something that you can maintain for the rest of your life. And that is something that is more healthy.
Due to time constraint, we are open to the last questions. Dr. EE, will consume too much of protein causes fatty liver?
Okay, so fatty liver disease is a disease in which your liver is too fatty. It's, as the name suggests, you have too much fat in your liver. Now, fatty liver disease is actually one of the most common liver diseases in the world. And some estimates put that as the most common chronic liver disease, especially in America. Now, the thing about fatty liver disease is that a lot of people who have fatty liver disease don't actually know that they have it, because a lot of the symptoms can either be very general, like feeling a bit tired, feeling a bit run down sometimes, or a lot of people they don't have any symptoms at all, and they only find out they have fatty liver disease because their doctor was running some tests and they noticed, hey, well, your liver tests are a little bit off. And when it comes to fatty liver disease, a lot of the time it's contributed by being overweight. So when it comes to fatty liver disease, it's not so much eating too much protein. Well, if you eat so much protein that you're taking in too many calories and you're becoming overweight, yeah, that could contribute to fatty liver disease. But when it comes to protein in normal, healthy amounts, no, it does not contribute to fatty liver disease. The main thing about fatty liver disease is, again, the unhealthy diet, the unhealthy lifestyle. And if you do have fatty liver disease, unfortunately, there's no specific treatment for treating it as well. The main treatment for fatty liver disease is the lifestyle changes. So it's to lose weight, to start eating a little bit healthier. And thankfully, it is one of those diseases that you can reverse. So if you do make these changes, there's a good chance that your liver can recover a little bit.
Thank you, Dr. EE, for the wonderful sharing. We hope to see you very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching my live stream. Thank you so much.
So once again, we thank Dr. EE for giving us this opportunity for such close interaction and her generosity in sharing her knowledge with us. We have reached the end of today's event. Thank you for your participation in today's session. Here, wishing you good health and happiness. Take care and goodbye.